biological bugs, how we fight our biology. We will have the candidate of medical science, doctor, endocrinologist, geriatrician, head of the laboratory at Biomarkers of Aging, curator for the research project called RUS-Age on how to fight aging.
Добрый вечер, друзья. Очень удивительно мне здесь быть.
Hello, everyone. Hi, dear friends. I'm so amazed to be here, and despite this bright sun, still continues to be here, and it's clearly that people on the left are feeling it hotter. But it will get even hotter because we'll be talking about one of the hot topics, not just live longer, because we can live longer, especially compared to the Middle Ages. It has now increased by at least 30 years. But now we are talking about happy lives. You do not want to live until you are 120 years, but suffer from all the diseases associated with long age. So the point of my presentation is positive. It's not to scare you with aging, but to tell you that aging is becoming an adult, becoming mature, becoming wiser. So the question is, how do we do this correctly, and how do we benefit the most from this process? We will cover these topics. I will try to stay within the time frame, because obviously we can continue about our own topics without end. But we could use aging biomarker agents, and you want to, maybe we can change the name. It's not aging, it's longevity biomarkers, because we want to take a positive perspective on this so that we can make our future happy and bright. So this is just for convention, a glossary of terminology which I'll be using today. You can take a photo and you can look up just to understand what I'm talking about. And do not be afraid, there is no deep science here. I'm so tired of deep science myself. This is Saturday. So let us have just a common discussion, simple discussion on how do we live longer and how do we have happy lives with our longevity project. What exactly is aging? Usually people use this as a negative word because aging means weakness, fragility, inability to do something you used to do before, or you do something poorly. But if we look a little bit deeper into the history, and when I was trying to look for universal definition of aging, I realized that it's impossible to do so. But it's also interesting to look at how people change their attitude towards aging from the ancient Greece times to the modern times, where people were welcoming old age to very bad connotation to quite normal and neutral, that this is just a process. These are the changes that happen to a body. But what kind of changes do we have? Well, it depends on you. You sit on the sun, you sit in the sun, and some people will have a burn and other people will have a tan. It depends on you. You have the same sun, but you have different results. It depends on you. Aging is not scary, and this is true. Usually we say that aging is bad, but there are different ways to age. This could be physiological aging. You could have active, successful, and biological, healthy aging. It should start with the fundamentals. You should start with healthy aging. So this is just a normal, natural process where your body still maintains the ability to do whatever you wanted to do before. If you are used to do some exercises, you can still do them later. It's not about saying that you became an athlete, a professional athlete, when you're 85 years old. That's not typical for him. But if they wanted to have an active rest and do not depend on people around them, then this is what they want to do, because dependence on other people is one of the worst things that could happen to us. I was sick. I was down with sickness yesterday, and I had to use the assistance of my sister, and I felt even worse because I couldn't do it myself. and I had to employ the help of my sister. Now we go to the active aging. This is the societal process. We are talking about the concept in different countries, including Russia, and this means that involvement of people so that aging people so that they remain the part of the society, and this is what we should reach in the end. So what exactly is aging, and when does it become wrong? So once again, without going super deep here, just for us to understand what happens inside cells, we have fundamental mechanisms of aging. These are neutral. If you regulate them correctly, they are neutral. We have chronic disease, we have chronic inflammation. For example, we get a scratch, we have pain, then we get lymphocytes towards this wound, and if it doesn't happen, we would have died from the loss of blood or from some of the diseases. But if the same inflammation becomes chronic, then it is bad. And the same applies to any aging mechanism. Now we're talking more and more about treating diseases, and fortunately, without some genetic or idiopathic, meaning unknown diseases. We have fewer and fewer from these, but we can actually prevent most of dangerous diseases. And this is the second stage. We are almost over it. And now we want to control how we age and how we live. There is a pure science that studies what happens inside cells, how it changes, how it ages, how it matures. And I really like aging. Instead of saying the Russian word, we would like to use the English word aging here. And it actually depends on your life. Whatever you do in your early life will result in your elder life, so that will be aging. So we learn about the longevity mechanisms in order to find the point where we could use medication or non-medication ways to improve our condition. Aging biomarkers, those could be absolutely different, and you'll see some examples. You might be surprised that you are sitting here listening to me, but you can collect a set of aging biomarkers, and I'm sure you have a library of them. You would go home and you can have your own research. So why do you need this? You have this biological age, which is a little bit different from normal age. And you can fight this aging in order to improve quality of life. You will have longer life, but you will not suffer from diseases. We're talking a lot about successful aging, besides this very complicated term, but in general, this is a model that includes 4 main areas. The majority is taken by non-medication prevention of aging, what we do not like at all. When I have patients and they ask me what can I do before I get the results of my blood analysis and so on, and I can tell them you can sleep, you can move, you can eat, you can hydrate, and people do not like this because this is not a panacea, this is not a silver bullet. People do not like this answer, but this is actually what surrounds us. This is what we do every day. And obviously it decreases the probability of catching any diseases. We have an improved mood, we have improved productivity, and there is a connection between the emotional status and the quality of life. Sure, we have to be inspired. Not a single scientist decided to study about age and longevity. And when we talk about people who went through longevity, these are people who maybe 80, 100 years old. So, but if you are 80 plus years old, this is very possible to achieve. I think you had relatives who celebrated their 80th anniversary, and you have very good chances to become one of those people who live up to 80, 90, 100 years. There are certain organisms in the world, not butterflies, but they have certain ways to hack those aging mechanisms. So those are biohackers right on the screen. One of them is a mollusk. It's a two-shell mollusk. Everybody knows it and everybody loves it. It has pearl inside. You can eat some of the mollusks, and they're great guys. But some of them, especially this one, this beautiful lady on the screen, ages not from they live a lot. They live because they cannot just live more. They become bigger and bigger, and we understand that active organisms first they develop, and after they reach the peak they decline. But instead, this mollusk only continues to increase in size and gets better and bigger, and then it just dies of hunger, not because of old age. It still demonstrates certain ways to hack your age. And this is the way to maintain certain proteins which we use in our body. And it is very important to maintain the state of those proteins. When you buy a new smartphone, you use it for a few months and after that you have problems. So why might this happen? Maybe you use some wrong software, maybe there was rain and water dripped on it. So this is very similar to what happens with mollusks. They can regulate those proteins and maintain them in very stable condition. And that's one of the reasons they age so much. They can do this. But obviously they do not suffer from depression. They do not have to look for a job. So they have fewer reasons to die from other problems. But we can still get inspiration from them. Another is, here is a beautiful animal, Somali cat, as you can see on the screen, but well, it doesn't really look like a cat, but well, we have to use our imagination. And it can also demonstrate how we can age slower. It still has the same outer size, it maintains its reproduction function, but it doesn't really care about its appearance because they live underground and they do not need fur, they do not really care about eyesight. They have whatever they need to live underground. Genes are responsible for our eye color, for our predisposition to diabetes and other things. So when it is born, they have decreased risk to catch any diseases, and they will maintain the same risk for diseases. And they die for absolutely stupid reasons, due to accidents. And obviously, when we're talking about animals, one of them, usually a dominant one, and they can have a battle for territory. But usually they live longer than 30 years. And those are relatives of rats that live only for 2 years. Those Somali cats live for 30 years, which is 15 times more. And what we want to reach in the end is the model number 3. We do not increase the number of ages we go through, but we improve the quality of our active life and we extend our active life. And this is what we want to achieve. So why? Well, in order to feel as comfortable as possible throughout our entire lives. And the main problem here is that we do not know how do we assess our health. Doctors, pediatricians, physicians, we go to school, we go to university, and we learn that this happens because of this is a symptom, this is probably this disease. So we learn this, we go later, but we kind of forget what exactly health means. If something happens to us, we start to sniff, we start to cough. Maybe nothing happened, maybe it's just normal physical process, but we think that everything is a pathology. So first, we have to understand how do we assess someone's health. So we're talking about aging mechanisms, and there are anti-aging mechanisms. This is resilience, or molecular resilience. And here's the good news. all of us, we train this resilience inside of us. Because it is hot, you sit in the same, using the same pose. And resilience, in good sense, it's an ability for an organism to restore to the previous state after you had some stress factor. Maybe somebody bumped into you on subway. You were angry at the time, but you are now okay. If you can bounce back very fast, then this is resilience. This is how we answer. This is how our body responds to different bacteria. And this is what usually happens before. For example, in cardiology, there are stress tests. When you ride a bicycle, when you cycle, and they take your EEG and pressure. Well, the reason is that they take some time to relax and see how fast, how quickly can you go back to the initial stage, and maybe it will take a lot. This is how you test your own resilience. There are other ways to assess your own health. We have our different cells inside of us, and all our organs have different speed of aging. Usually, skin, hair, fingernails, these parts of our body have to suffer from the external environment, and they age faster, as opposed to internal cells. If we treat them well, they will serve us longer. Another important mechanism which has been underestimated for a long period of time is autophagy. These are basically cells that eat themselves. So this is a process that happens inside of cell, and even inside of all of us. This is a natural process of regeneration and self-cleansing at the molecular level. And most scientists thought that it was a basically waste management system. You have a biochemical reaction, there are some debris, and you need to get rid of them. But it turns out that's not the only thing. It turns out that this process of eating yourself, eating the cell itself, is one of the important cases for. Yes, so this process and the mechanisms that regulate it can happen inside the nucleus. The nucleus is a CPU. It's the most important parts of a cell that contains all the data, all the information, and restarts the processes. If anyone has access to the nucleus, they have the top-level access. Then anyone is very important. And this process is not just waste management system. It's a very important process that can be stimulated by different factors from the environment, which we get from the environment, which we can benefit from. And internal potential, this is, well, we often say that this person has a lot of potential, and because of that, there is a term of internal potential. So this is the functionality, abilities, capabilities, combination of different characteristics of body or a person that allow him or her to stay independent, to maintain their own characteristics of themselves. But at the same time, it's a way to assess the health level for someone. Here we focus on the positives, not on the negatives, and this could be a little bit more difficult. Even professionals are educated in a way that first you have to understand if it's sickness or not, if it's a disease or not. But people have different taste differences and preferences. People sleep in a different way. And if we consider that everything must be a disease, then that will be a very simple classification. It will be very strict and usually unacceptable ways to unify everyone here. But we're not talking about inner potential. These are things that you can look inside a person and see how they affect in a positive way their characteristics. Obviously, you want to get rid of the negatives, but you want to bolster the positives. And finally, we reach the biological age. You probably have heard about biological age.
Может быть, не слышали, но наверняка
Maybe you haven't heard, but
об этом говорят.
you probably have heard everybody is talking about we have chronological age,
Для чего? Для паспорта.
which is different from biological age. We need chronological age for the passport, to buy alcohol when you're 18 or 21, depending on the country. We need it for the court so that you can go to prison. You need to be within a certain age frame.
Возраст выглядит по-разному. Кто-то выглядит
But
моложе,
people
мы говорим, о, ничего себе, тебе 56,
look different when they are
а кто-то
Oh,
выглядит
you are 56, but you look like you are 54. And some people are 30, but look like they are 68. And probably they have difference in their capabilities and they use pathological aging instead of successful aging. Previously, all the risks were assessed. So, for example, there is a person who is 60 or 70 years old and they have different scales, like calculator of sorts. And in this scale, if you pinpoint, okay, this person is 60 years old, then they get plus 10 on this scale. And people don't really care if they had high risk group before.
И чем больше шло об этом разговоров, тем больше пришло понимание, что надо оценивать какой-то другой возраст, а именно истинный возраст организма. Было много еще исследований. Там брался...
There've been more research as well, where they would take the same chronological age. It would be young people, age 38. I think now the young age is considered to be up to 40 or 45, right? So that's the young people, and their biological age would be 28 to 61. I don't know what you need to do at age 38 to score as age 61, but there are things you can do, certainly. So in order to understand what are the specific issues you've got to address with the doctor, or like a biohacker working recently who really wants to hack this wrong aging, you need to understand how old you really are and what biological age is about. And the biological age is the real age. That's a dynamic indicator. It's the speed of aging of a particular organ or system. You can check or measure how your brain or mind ages, and there is a cognitive calculator. You can check the aging of your bones. No, you can come up with a universal calculator. We're working on that as well, but they're not that precise. However, they're quite viable. In order to create this kind of calculator, you have to have its components, because essentially it's a formula that consists of a set of several elements, including different indicators of the rate of aging, the biomarkers of aging, that reflect the different processes that characterize the aging and its impact. I mean, it's not about aging being a bad thing. The most important thing is that they've got to respond to some kind of interventions. What kind of biomarkers of aging can you have at all? It's not an amazingly new thing. It's not something that came up like 5 minutes ago. Soon it will have been 100 years since people started thinking about how to measure the aging properly. And thanks to breakthrough in medicine, in science and research, in the human genome decoding, we managed to get the answers to multiple questions. And this generated, in fact, lots of questions without the answers. What biomarkers are there? When I talk to my colleagues who are not working on aging and longevity, when I talk to my patients and friends, they all start coming up with some space-like ideas. It's like blood assays, or the spinal liquid, or the bone marrow liquid, or to isolate a particular gene. But there are some very simple aging biomarkers. And in the first place, I guess you are seated now, you have your cell phones, you have the smart watches. So you can start collecting the digital biomarkers of your aging. What's that? It's all kinds of measurements that in quantitative or qualitative manner get reflected in our gadgets. That is, how many steps you've done today, what's your weight today compared to your weight yesterday, how much water you've had, the sleeping phase, and so on. The gadgets are a great thing. Most of them are quite
Нельзя только по показателям.
safe, but it's not a magic bullet. I mean, you cannot just rely on the smartwatch and the measurements and the number of steps you do. You have some physiological biomarkers, and you can test this at home
Друзьях, родственниках.
using yourselves and your family and using these as your role models, like the speed at which we walk. Walking speed. Usually, when they pastiche an elderly person, they show this person with a walking stick. And this is the most visible characteristic. No one is going to test him for his cognitive ability. First, we really see how the person moves, how freely he moves, regardless of the support. Now, the handshake, the strength of the handshake, the aging political leaders seek to give a most powerful handshake when they are filmed. I mean, there is the dynamometer. That's a special gadget you use in medicine to measure the power and strength of handshake. Then there is a certain power you apply at a particular age. If your handshake is not strong enough, it certainly
Скоро ждут большие.
demonstrates that you are aging. That's why the politicians seek to give a strong, powerful handshake every time they're filmed.
Биомаркеры. Вот молекулярные. Чаще всего все думают про
Molecular biomarkers. Usually people think about the molecular ones.
различных. Наверное, нам сейчас потянет.
That is about, I think my screen is going to be up quite soon, but I remember what I was going to say.
Получаются при анализе.
It's the biomarkers we get when analyzing some particular liquids or a tissue of the body. In fact, I'm seeing some people are training their resilience and responding to stress to adjust the screen. Excellent. So why do we collect all these data? We do that in order to put together some working formula that would be quite simple, so that any ordinary person can use it, or so that it's complex enough to be used in science labs. Another important thing is that biomarkers have to change. They've got to respond in some way to the environmental factors or to lifestyle change factors. I mean, if somebody used to have a weak handshake, but he's now eating a lot of protein, doing a lot of exercise to train his resilience, it all reemerges. No, I'm clearly letting out way too many secrets. I had to be a little less detailed, right? And my screen goes on and off. So we need to see this indicator dynamically. We need to check if it's become strong, if the person has become stronger or weaker. What about his handshake? If we have some statics, like for instance, the color of your eyes. I mean, you don't have eyes becoming blue from the original brown color. That is not a good biomarker, right? Because this is a biomarker, it's not going to change. So biomarkers of the timbre of the voice, the resilience, the strength, the power, the number of particular cells in peripheral blood, all of these are viable biomarkers. It's way too sunny here, right? So there is also a set of georeproductive mechanisms that indeed help to evaluate how the aging biomarkers change, like georeproduction. This is the real hacking of the aging system and the drug against old age. Well, there will never be any universal pill to protect us from the aging. We're all very different. My colleague has just spoken with his presentation, so we all need something special. We are getting away from the unification. I mean, in the past, it was wonderful. People could walk in pretty much the same way. To my sister, who is 10 years younger than me, to her, it's just completely crazy. It's wild. I mean, my friends and I used to be the same. Very similar. You had one model cell phone, one kind of jeans, and the rest of it. Now we're moving on to a customized approach, which makes it possible for us to select the target solutions to wrong aging. It can be walking, it can be a Giro pill. I hope after my lecture you will get up and walk. And this is a Giro protector, a protector against your old age, right? So if you're 38, it does not mean you really are 38. Multi-omics profiles, well, no. This is just a set of very precise indicators in your blood, mainly the proteins, the lipids, that make it possible to evaluate what's going on with your body. So what comes out of it? My colleagues who had this opportunity did some study to see that there are two key points of development of the body. It's the age of 40 and the age of 60. And these are the two key points where we have to impact our condition, our health. So where does this come from? 40 is the age that you do not celebrate. We don't know where this comes from. It's just a superstition. And paradoxically, in some other folk tales and legends, we find things that come from the biohacking world, from the world of georeproductive technologies. Right? So it's 40, and it's the age of 40 and the age of 60. That's when you need to check out your health. You just calculate your biological age, and you have this aging clock. At my university, we have already created, I'm not going to show this clock to you because we have already created 10 formula of different calculators for biological age, from a simple survey to a more complex one. I will show you the names. Why? That helps to evaluate what your body is like, what it feels like, what applications we can impact, and to measure the efficacy of our involvement. I mean, if there is any response, hopefully a positive one or not. I'm so impressed with the concept of biological age that I used it twice in my presentation. What kind of biological clock do you have? It can be as you want it to be. It can be genetic, epigenetic, transcriptomic, cognitive, phenotypical, microbiotic, lipidonomic one. Once, the important thing is that it has the components that can change with time and in response to some intervention. So, in fact, it looks quite simple, but the calculators of biological age were created by artificial intelligence, guided by the natural human intelligence, of course. I mean, you can certainly not outsource this to neural networks, but they help us find the connections we were not aware of. And very soon, we get the proof to what we were assuming. So with the deep neural networks, we do this learning, we do this teaching, and the researchers get the formula that they can get adjust upon request. Not always do we like them, because the artificial intelligence does not care whether or not we care about it. If I come to my patients and say, if your hemoglobin is not 122, but it is 123, I will not come to my visit anymore. So we work this way. It doesn't matter to this patient. Now give us a formula with a different set of results. And it does. So there are already lots of studies that have demonstrated that the biological age does matter. It plays an important role in the prediction of all kinds of unfavorable events. Not necessarily it's a death, it may be the emergence of some life-threatening disease or a chronic threatening disease. And it's about how the measurement of biological age can impact this. These studies have been done in men and women. This is the one I really like, and it's a simple one. We had about 3,000 women analyzed for their dietary preferences. So they've received some recommendations in terms of what they eat. I don't like the word diet, because when I say diet, I immediately think of myself. It's restricting yourself on things. Well, no, this is sad. So to my obese patients, I say it's the way you eat. It's how you eat. Then I tell them exactly the same thing, but they feel more positive about it. Now, compliance with healthy diet used to be associated with lower values of biological age. They came into this study with the gap of like they were 25 and their biological age was 40, but then they came out of it and their biological age was 35. You know, it's not like you cannot expect the magic when in the paintings by Lucas Cranach, the elder, you get the elderly women walking into a fountain and the young ones coming out of it. No. We have this age study initiated by the University Pirogov, where I work, and we do the calculators for the Russian population, because what works for Russians will not work elsewhere. The calculator is very much nation or ethnicity specific. I mean, the Russian population, we pretty much have in mind it's a very diverse ethnic mix. So we make adjustments to the regions. But however, there is a lot that brings us together. So the important thing is to identify the aging biomarkers that work for us here and now, for our population and to create these special biological age calculators.
Вот то количество,
We're doing quite well.
которое мы сделали.
This is the number of calculators we have already developed. We can split them from the simple ones to the complex ones. You have the calculator to evaluate the organic acids in the urine. Not all the labs are able to do this. Biochemical calculators are easier, but you've got to come and have your blood tested. Anamnesis, all right, the history, the patient history, you fill out the survey in some coded way. The doctor enters his responses into the system and you get to know the biological age. Now, why is this the patient's biological age? Then you come back and do the study, but as initial diagnostics, this is certainly helpful. And to conclude,
Механизм антистарения, да, но тем не менее,
there are mechanisms of anti-aging, but there are also the mechanisms of the aging, which we have to impact. I mean, that's the chronic sterile inflammation that becomes persistent, permanent. How do we impact that in real life?
лайфхаки
Well,
для того, чтобы этот
these are the life hacks to
контролировать.
control the mechanism of your aging. That's vaccination. Paradoxical it is, but that stimulates your immune system. That makes it possible to properly build this inflammation chain. Lifestyle.
Активные технологии, я же вам говорила. Сразу
No one wants to listen to stories about the simple geroprotective technologies. It's healthy food, healthy diet. There is no universal magic bullet. It's analytics. It's the drugs that we're looking for, the biologically active
влиять на клетки уже под
substances that will impact the cells that are already susceptible to unhealthy aging. But that's what we're working on. So I really want you to know that there is not a single drug available these days that would prove the efficacy in aging prevention. So do not buy stuff in ambiguous websites. Do not listen to coaches. I mean, you've got to understand what's available here and now. And these are the lifestyle components. I mean, as long as until we have this foundation, like in the Maslow pyramid, we will not move on. It's not the Mediterranean diet, it's the regional one. We don't eat olive oil in this country. It's got to be available. Olive oil is good. It's also vegetable oil, so we can have that. We do not eat that many mussels and seafood generally as they do in the forest, but then you've got to change your diet with regard to the region where you are living. It's physical activity and it's limiting the endocrine disruptors in plastic surgery. It's exposure to the sun, physical activity. And in fact, there is a study, I didn't want to believe that for a long time, but there is a study that corroborates that. The changes of the lifestyle
и
towards the physical, more physical activity, encourage longevity and improve the biological age. Sleep is very important. Those who are interested in the studies
совсем мало, да,
will know and see that if you don't sleep enough, it's bad. It's bad at any age.
тоже надо учиться, оказывается.
Now, how you sleep is something you've got to learn. Melatonin is
Которое вырабатывается
natural
в теле, есть
component that is generated
можно
by
менять по требованию.
your body. You have lots of additional additives. I mean, it's not a magic bullet. It's not a somniferous medication. But when you change time zones, for instance, it certainly helps. Ultimately,
Нужно искать какую-то грань разумного. Биохакинг
you've always got to look for the reasonable. Biohacking, I'm not a biohacker. I mean, we have things, hack things as well, but in different terms. I mean, I have given the most popular definitions of biohacking. They're very different from the neutral ones. I mean, it's a remedying practice to the technology of
биологически
bringing together the biological system with the non-organic
к этому разумно. Что
materials. Time will show what is right. You've got to be reasonable. The important thing is that the gadgets and
да, может,
the gadgets
говорили, но
are
понимаете,
good. We've talked about that. And it's not a human being. It's not a researcher. It's not a doctor. Gadget just collects your information. The biological additives, well, not always, because like dietary supplements can be safe, but they do not necessarily come as safe. So
заметку
here are a few useful things to take away with you.
двигаемся к тому, что
And we're moving on towards
это не всегда плохо.
understanding that aging is not necessarily a bad thing. Unhealthy aging is bad. And that's where you need prevention and medication. Here is a little muscle, and
Тоже свой протест, чтобы жить.
this is an image of this wonderful biological organism who knows how to regulate his proteostasis to be similar to him. Любовь. Your name means love.